Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome everyone to the Firestone Williams Report. It's September 20th today? 19th? Oh my gosh, I'm a day ahead. 19th today. It's Wednesday, September 19th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And you don't really look like Scott Williams, my usual co-host, Alex.
No, my name's Alex Wolf. I'm filling in for Scott Williams today. I don't quite have the pedigree that he has, but I'm going to do my best.
Well, you're a YouTube star, and, you've done some other things. So Alex is a young executive assistant, and I think you're in book 2 of my Quantum Entity trilogy. How did you actually worm your way into the book, you know?
Yeah, Bruce, actually, you had mentioned to me that I had managed to sneak my way into the book there. I didn't know how at first, but I guess I've been doing a good enough job here to get a cameo as the executive assistant to an important character in the novel.
Yes, so. You are. You're a very important character, and you make a cameo appearance. I got your permission to do that. Thank you, Alex. And you actually play an important role at one point. You're advising a physicist working at the University of British Columbia, and you're saying to him, you think a certain person is okay, and she's not a terrorist, and so you show good judgment in the book, Alex. But in real life, so what? Tell the listeners what it is that you actually do.
So I work here. Originally, I started with Explorium.org and kind of moved over to helping Bruce Firestone here with the real estate and some cool things we got going on with courses and different events. We have a Skip Aid event, which you'll learn more about.
What's that? You got to tell everybody.
Oh, you got to go now? Okay, well.
Did you do a business model for Skip Aid?
I did do a business model for Skip Aid. One of my first ones, and Bruce, you helped me tweak it, and it turned out pretty good, actually.
And you did that with Peter Tilley from the Ottawa Food Bank.
Peter Tilley from the Ottawa Food Bank, and we're going to hopefully be working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, as well as Christie Lake Kids, Camp for Kids, and coming next August, I believe, is the time we're looking at doing it. Next August, it's going to be a really fun event. The outdoors barbecue at Mooney's Bay is the hope. Again, this is all very preliminary, but we're hoping to get the charities together and to hold a stone skipping competition and a lot of other fun stuff.
So if I understand it right, you and Peter and Make-A-Wish and Christie Lake Kids, what you're planning to do is invite executives to come to Skip Aid at Mooney's Bay or wherever it might be, and you pair them up with kids from Make-A-Wish or from Christie Lake Kids or from Ottawa Food Bank families, and so maybe, Alex, if you were skipping a stone, you skipped it 12 times and your kid skipped it 4, your total score would be what counts, right?
That's right. I mean, I don't know if I could skip it 12 times.
I
got lots of time to practice.
Wait a second, what's the world record for skipping?
The world record for skipping is 55 skips.
Wow.
55,
yeah. That must defy the law of physics. We're joined today by Stephanie Montroy from Gilmore Marketing. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
And Brett Surchinson from Mediumizer. You're one of the founders there, Brett?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Are you the original? Is there like one founder?
I am the original. Well, actually, we have 3 founders, and I'm the guy that started or lit the match, I guess. Sorry, lit the fuse, sorry. I lit the match, then I lit the fuse. So.
Now, Mediumizer's growing pretty big now.
Yeah, we have about, I guess, around 40 staff.
Wow, that's big. And we're going to hear more from you. And Stephanie, you joined Gilmore Marketing, and you're in a completely unique area. I mean, a lot of people like myself have thought about Gilmore in an old industry like printing, but you're in the new part of this business.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I'm the Director of Social Media Services, and basically Gilmore, realizing that the landscape is changing out there and the needs are changing, wanted to add social media services to their offering to complete all of their other services. We offer direct mail as well as microsites and personal URL services and all that kind of stuff. So when you're doing a holistic advertising campaign or awareness campaign, you'll probably tend to use all of those services together to maximize the reach of your message.
Well, maybe you could help Alex and the food bank with direct mail there for Skip Aid.
Oh, well, there you go.
And, so, no, I'm quite serious about that.
Yeah.
Offline, maybe you can spend some time
yeah.
with the food bank and Make-A-Wish and good groups and Christy Lake Kids and, of course, exploring.org and talk more about Skip Aid. But coming back to Gilmore, you know, can you show me and help me, again, what is the link between the old line businesses that Gilmore runs and this new division, which you are the head of, as I understand.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people still think of Gilmore as just printing,
right.
and they've in fact been doing a lot of other things that just isn't maybe as public as the printing, and their reputation is so well established on the printing side that the other lines of business are sort of secondary and not as large as let's say, like I mentioned, the microsites. And so, for example, if we were to do a campaign for someone, what we might do is we might do a direct mail piece first that would lead you to a personalized URL. So explorium.com/Stephanie, for example, and then you would have some messaging there that would be targeted to either a segment or a person in particular, and then you could have, you know, a link to the Twitter account and the Facebook account. So that's how, you know, so we would print a direct mail piece, but then we would direct you to an online property.
Yeah. And so would you actually run the Facebook page, run the Twitter account for these folks?
Yes, so we can do that, absolutely. We do offer the fulfillment services, but we can also, some individuals prefer to run that in-house.
Sure.
So we can either do just the strategy and hand over that strategy and all of the operating procedures that you might need to run that internally. And then if you have a staff person that's actually able at that moment take that and run, that's great. If you need us to come in to do the training piece, we can do that as well, because sometimes people have sort of an idea of what they should be doing, but they're not quite sure, so we can help you do that. But we also have in-house designers that can help you design the custom pages too. So Twitter, for example, has just rolled out a new design. So now everybody's going to want a fancy splash page because it's different. So we can help you design that as well, which is great because it means that if you're doing like print, online, and social media, we can help you design all of those pieces as well in-house. And you only have to deal with one person, which is great. Sometimes somebody can do your social media, but you have to go to an agency to do the design, and sometimes the agencies are quite pricey. So
have you noticed that?
We offer that all in-house, so one person.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long have you been at Gilmore now?
Since the end of March.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the growth in this division that you're running there? How are you guys doing?
Yeah, no, we're doing great. So there's definitely a lot of interest, and we're lucky that we're quite ingrained in the community, so I have a lot of contacts coming in as well.
Right.
So lots of great
meetings. You have over 4,000 followers on Twitter, right?
That's right.
Twice what I have.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I was actually at a conference yesterday with Scott Stratton and Biz Stone, so the number of followers I have is by far eclipsed there. But it's not about the followers, it's about the quality of your interactions anyway.
I agree with that. I mean, you know, if you look at some of the celebrity Twitter accounts, I'm getting my hair done today. Okay, you know, that's kind of interesting, I suppose, if you're a fan, but not really that interesting overall.
No, exactly. But it gives you a glimpse. Actually, it's funny because Biz Stone was mentioning yesterday that they didn't think that the celebrities would take on Twitter, really, because it shows a glimpse into their personal lives.
Sure.
And he thought that that would not be a good target market for them, and it's totally taken off.
Now, Biz Stone is one of the founders of
Correct.
But he's not there anymore, I don't think.
He is.
Oh, he's still there, but
the
other founder, I think, may have left.
Correct.
Okay, so he's still there.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
and
so
where were you yesterday? Where you saw
it was at the AGM meeting. So
he came to that. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. So it was the opening keynote was Scott Stratton, and the closing keynote was Biz Stone.
Wow,
fantastic.
Yeah, CIRA is the Canadian Internet Registry Authority.
Correct.
Yeah. So just in case people don't know, if you need a .ca, you ultimately
contact them.
Well, through the registrars, you end up with CIRA. Okay, well, you've kind of introduced Biz and Twitter. Did he tell you and the audience a little bit about where Twitter's going?
So actually, the talk was mostly about not Twitter. It was about what things he's learned, and it was basically storytelling.
Come on, share it with us.
So he talked about
he's
how...
now a legend. How old is he, though? He's a young kid.
Very young,
He's in his 20s, I think.
He might be younger than I am, even. So it's, he's impressively young for having accomplished what he's accomplished. But,
and he's the CEO there now?
I'm sure that's not what he called himself.
You know what, Mark Zuckerberg has that T-shirt, right? I'm the CEO, something rather, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, the best story he told was how they had been, so Facebook wanted to buy Twitter quite a few years ago.
Thank God they didn't.
And so, oh God, I know. So they actually, so he told us the story of what happened that day. Right. So I guess him and Ev were in the car on the way over, and a car came to pick them up, and they're like, well, we have to go. It's Facebook. So then they're in the car, and I think they had just been valued at $25 million.
Wow.
So they're joking in the car, like, what are we going to do? They didn't particularly want to sell, but everybody can be bought, right?
Sure.
So they're joking and saying that they would sell if they were offered $500 million.
Right.
And so they went to the meeting, and he said it was very awkward, and Zuckerberg was very Zuckerberg-like. And so they sat in this, so there was only a love seat and a chair. So Mark, of course, took the chair, and then the other two boys were forced to sit.
Not really that comfortable, most guys are doing that.
And so he said, and apparently Mark just said, so I don't really like to talk about numbers and stuff like that, but why don't you give me one, and I'll tell you yes or no. And so, so I guess Ev just said $500 million, and Mark Zuckerberg said, that's a big number. And then apparently Biz said, you told us he would say yes or no. And that was the end of the meeting. They said that they would, he would think about it and he would get back to them. And he eventually got back to them and told them that he would give them the $500 million that they were asking for. But he said, we thought about it, and we weren't done with it. We were still having fun. We were still loving what we were doing. It was still growing. We had no idea where it was going, so why would we, sell before we even grasp sort of the enormity of what it could be?
Well, I'm a big believer, Stephanie, in build and hold as opposed to build and flip, even in the tech sector. And, Brett, you've heard me say that too. And I don't disagree with what you said, Stephanie, that anybody can be bought, but Zuckerberg himself said, he had offers for $1 million for Facebook back in the day, and then $2 million, and then $10 million, and then $100 million, and then $2 billion, and then $10 billion. But he kept on asking himself the question, well, if I sold it for whatever amount of money, what would I want to wake up tomorrow and do? I'd like to work on a transformational company that has worldwide implications, and that would be what? Facebook. So he decided not to, and I do admire him for that, awkward personality or not. But let's come back to you, Brett. Tell our listeners and the rest of us here today a little bit more about Mediumizer. I mean, you do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, so what we do is we monitor, analyze both social and traditional media, and we're able to correlate the two. And the big thing for us is we're also able to disseminate the media intelligence back to our consumers or to our customers.
Right. Well, okay, now I know you have some big customers. Can you disclose on the show who some of your customers and clients are?
Sure. We have Government of Canada, Canada Post, Fortune 500 companies such as Coca-Cola, Best Buy, Future Shop. So, and we also have some nonprofits in there, and other government agencies or government-like agencies like NGOs. So, we cross the spectrum of clients.
Now, Alex, do we have somebody who's calling in?
Yeah, we got Dave Hale here from Social.
All right, let's put him. I think we should put him on.
I know Dave there.
For you. Hi, David. It's Bruce Firestone here. Can you hear us?
Hey, Bruce. Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing?
All right. So you're on the Firestone Williams report. Only Scott Williams and his family are in Disney World. He takes his kids down there for 2 weeks. So you've got myself, Alex Wolf, Stephanie Montroy, and Brett Searchinson from Mediumizer. So you're joining us.
Hey, everyone.
I'm glad that you had time to join us. The subject matter today we want to talk about is, the impact that new media is having, on existing businesses, and of course the impact it's having on old media. So we have a great group now, and Dave, just because we've got you now and you've called in, can you tell us a little bit more about Social?
Yeah, sure. Social Group is a digital marketing and innovation agency. We're based here in Ottawa. and our main focus is on how can you leverage new media and technology to improve not only marketing and communications, but just overall business processes and achieve organizational goals. So a little bit broader scope than just your standard kind of marketing or creative agency. And we've been doing it for a few years now. Work with a lot of great clients across the country, a few in the States. So, that's us in a nutshell.
Yeah, David, can you spell the URL for everybody? Because social is spelled a little differently.
Yeah, we're a pretty young company. I guess we failed a few grade school grades, but it's www.soshalgroup.com.
All right. So, David, take us through. Can you tell us a couple of the clients that people might recognize the names? Can you give us a couple of names and then walk us through kind of what Social Group does for folks?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess a few of our notable clients would be Algonquin College, if we're talking locally, Algonquin College, the Ottawa Senators, the Canadian Medical Association, Government of Canada, various divisions, City of Ottawa, various divisions, Carleton University, oh my gosh, who else do we have? The Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, a whole bunch. And what our focus generally is on is like I said before when I was kind of introducing what we do, helping with digital marketing activities, so everything from website design, development, digital strategy, so SEO programs, social media programs, but then also things like application development for web, social, and mobile. We also do a lot of design and creative work, so motion graphic videos, advertising, creative writing, you name it. But then what's really more exciting about what we're doing is the innovation side of our business. And we define innovation as working with brands and organizations when they have like a program or a project or a technology platform that they're looking to launch or implement or revitalize, and kind of manage the program for them end to end, from everything from strategy to just the day-to-day management to the technology development, campaigns to promote those programs, and that's kind of become our sweet spot. And I think that's what's really interesting about, when you talk about new media and new technology, it's the idea that there's some really, really innovative, really great brands and organizations that are out there that just don't have the either in-house resources or capabilities or time to, dive into some of these more innovative things that they're trying to do. And that's when they get social, as we like to say.
I love the name social, and I think it speaks to what our whole subject here is today for the next 45 minutes. Let's take the Ottawa Senators. You mentioned they're a client of yours, and let's take that as an example. I was talking to Cyril Leader a few weeks ago, and this is before the lockout, and the Senators, from the excitement of last year when they had a good year, they made the playoffs, and they were heading towards maybe a new all-time record for season tickets. So things were moving in the right direction. Obviously, that's at least on a pause now. What would you do for the Sens, and how would you change their digital strategy?
Well, there's a few things right now. I mean, so last year we worked on the All-Star campaign for them, ran a social contest to where fans could literally get in the game, and that was the name of the program. But I think that what's really interesting about professional sports right now, we also work with the Canadian Hockey League and a bunch of OHL and WHL teams and their affiliates. So what's really interesting is just the monetization of a fan beyond the ticket sale, right? Because that program is kind of figured out, how many more tickets are you going to sell through like a Facebook page or a Twitter account, maybe a few, but it's not going to replace some of the legacy programs that the team has in place. But what we're really interested in is like in-game fan engagement. So if Alfie scores a goal, do you get pinged on your mobile phone saying that you can buy an Alfie jersey at Sensations for 10% off if you click buy now, like that kind of stuff. So and I think that's the area where all sports teams are moving towards. There's some really great case studies out there from like the Maple Leafs and a few other like NFL teams in the States where we're really, really optimizing in-game fan engagement through things like mobile devices or SMS, proximity messaging and things like that. So I think that's a really, really interesting area of opportunity.
Some National Football League teams, though, have been moving to curb fans sitting in their arenas tweeting out plays of the game. They have a couple of thousand followers, and they're tweeting it. Griffin there for the Redskins throws 3 touchdown passes in his first game, and some National Football League teams have I think taken the wrong approach here, and I want to go back to you, Stephanie, for a minute. When you see some organizations that have been around for a long time, like the National Football League, which is generally viewed, I think, as one of the best run leagues, when they react to something like that and they try to stop a fan from tweeting out, the action on the field because they say that's our information, we own it, this copyright is ours, how would you react to that? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think that's wrong as well, and I think, David would agree with that. And it's unfortunate because you want to involve your fans as much as possible.
I would think so.
If they're involved and they're tweeting about it, that means that they're involving, their circle of influence as well. So
and they're retweeted?
Exactly.
Can that be bad? So coming back to you, Brett, if a National Football League team was, a part of your, was a client of Mediumizer, and you may have some for all I know.
CFL.
The CFL, fair enough. I mean, what would Mediumizer pick up? I mean, people would push back on that, would they not?
Would Mediumizer...
You would pick that up, though.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us how you would do that.
Well, essentially, we monitor all sources. We can monitor both traditional and social media, and I think the real value that Mediumizer brings to the table is we correlate that data together. So what we're dealing with is the actual influencers. Where a lot of people right now, and I love the approach by the Senators and by social groups, is they're basically turning fans into ecosystems, which I think is...
Wow. That's a great name.
Is
that your word? Ecosystems? I haven't heard that before.
Well, an ecosystem essentially.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, there you go. You essentially turn your base into a sales channel.
Wow.
And that's what essentially that they're doing at the end of the day. And I think it's a great approach. We don't deal with that in the way that social does. We actually deal with the influencers. So we'll go after the influencers, and that's what our tool does. We turn news into knowledge, and we were able to correlate both.
Now that sounds like a slogan.
It is. A slogan.
Is that your tagline?
It is.
News into knowledge.
And I don't mind taking credit for it, but I actually came up with it.
That's good though.
Yeah.
Because news is news, and I often say that you could take a news broadcast from 20 years ago, a CBC news broadcast from 20 years ago, and sneak it into tonight, into the national, and nobody would know the difference because it's not really news. Another bombing, another murder, another serial murderer. I mean, to me, that's not really news because we've been reporting the same things for 25 years. So what you're doing is you're monitoring media for clients like Coca-Cola,
right,
and you pick up the positives, but you pick up the negatives too.
Well, what we can do is we can leverage both traditional and social media to deliver real business intelligence,
right,
such as competitive intelligence. Competitive intelligence
that's
huge
different
for a lot of these companies.
So how does that work?
Well, we compare for example, we compare our clients against their competitors.
So Coca-Cola against Pepsi.
Right. Well, I'm not going to go into specifics, but...
but look at the come on, back me up here. You can't see it, David, but that was a yes.
But when it comes down to it, you really need to know what's going on there. And it's not just the competitive intelligence.
Right, that makes sense.
You need to know about the issues, the trends, what's happening, what happens if you have a crisis. You want to get on that quickly. And you want to be talking to the people that are the most influential, that are going to get your message out there. And it's important to have...
That's cool.
Yeah, it's important to have clarity when it comes to your messages, and you have to be consistent.
And there's always, what's interesting is you need to look at context as well, right?
Right.
So like
and I think that's what Brett's saying here.
And you can read something, but without the context, it doesn't give you all of the information that you need to take an action on that. And to go back on the NFL, I think what's unfortunate when you're stopping fans to talk about the good stuff is you're not encouraging them to tell you what they might like, what they want to see more of,
right.
and to leverage
like.
that knowledge, exactly, so that you can tailor what it is that you're doing even better so that you can monetize even more, right? So I think whenever you stop people from talking, you're totally closing a door on an opportunity to learn more and do better.
I think, there's some folks out there in the earlier days of the Internet. When somebody would set up a site, WalmartSucks.com or something like that, they would sue them for copyright infringement, and it turned out, at least in the United States, that was a protected form of speech. And others would look at that if you had AmericanExpressSucks.com, and they might say, well, instead of suing them, I'll actually look at the site and learn from it because, obviously people are having some problems and issues to learn something from it. Coming back to you, Brett. Media Miser has done a few takeovers recently. As I recall, I came to your office once, and you had a takeover. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We acquired a company called InfoGlutton. InfoGlutton is a really great company with great technology, and we acquired them.
They had PhDs galore, as I recall.
Yes. So essentially what we did was we brought over the people from InfoGlutton. They fired me as the CTO, and we brought David Nadeau in as their CTO, and he's a pretty smart guy with a PhD in content information extraction. So, I know that's a mouthful, but believe me, what he brings to our product is bringing it to the next level. One of the big things that we can do is sentiment. So we can automate the sentiment within our system. So we can actually tell.
Really?
Yeah. So we can actually say where a piece of text, whether it's good or bad, in the proper context. So essentially, our system is able to learn from the content coming in, and we can actually train it. So if the solution gets it wrong, we can actually train the solution to learn from the human.
What you need to do is integrate that with Siri.
Yeah.
Right? So that when I talk to my iPhone, she'll get it when I'm mad at her. You understand?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So call Apple, will you?
Yeah, Bruce, you're full of ideas. Yeah.
I am. Well, you got to remember, I just wrote a trilogy about artificial intelligence.
That's
so
true.
It is on my mind. Actually, I'm lying. I didn't write the trilogy. I've only written 2 out of 3 books. I got to write one more next year. So that was one of the acquisitions. Any more acquisitions on the horizon? I mean, that you want to disclose for the very first time here on this show?
Well, we wouldn't disclose something like that, but
you're fired.
I think it.
Donald Trump said?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Brett.
But I really believe that if you really want to be a progressive company, and the reason why we acquired InfoGlutton because it was a perfect fit. It made sense, and essentially, at the end of the day, because it made good business sense, we weren't afraid to do it.
Right.
So, we're not afraid to make bold moves at Media Miser, and it's based on our business plan. And I think that's the important element that I think a lot of companies are missing. It's a solid business plan, it's a solid direction. And once you have that, all the pieces kind of fall into place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you have some intellectual property, too, that you have patented, as I recall. You have some algorithms. Is that right?
That's correct.
And have you actually gotten patents for those?
Yes, we have a U.S. patent and a Canadian patent.
Okay, and can you share with us what that is? Because, I mean, it is public, I guess, at least to the extent that you disclosed it.
So we have an automated sentiment engine for the U.S., and in Canada we're able to patent pretty well everything as far as our technology is concerned. Wow. We didn't get a large encompassing patent in the U.S. It's still pretty powerful down there. But in Canada, we got the whole shebang, so we're pretty proud of that.
That's something to be proud of. Not easy to do. I mean, how long did that patent process take, and can you tell us what it costs to patent something in Canada and the United States?
Well, the cost went up incrementally. I guess it was incrementally more as we went along, and that was a bit of a shocker, but it was worth the money. I think when it comes down to it, when you put in a patent, we've got it both in the U.S. and Canada. We did it the smart way, where we patented in the States, and then we did an international patent out of that one, and then we cherry-picked the countries that we wanted, and the big one was Canada. So I think it goes back to 2007, so we started writing it in 2006.
Right.
And then, so officially when it was put in, it was 2007, so it goes back to 2007.
So a long process, right? And can you put an order of magnitude on it? Is it a $10,000 investment? Is it a $100,000 investment? Is it a $50,000 investment?
I think it varies, and if, for example, if you get a lot of questions by the examiner, that's going to up the cost. If you have a lot of, if you can navigate the system, then without a lawyer, that's going to cut down.
Forget it.
Yeah.
That's not realistic, I don't think.
You know what? And it's not really the lawyers that do the work. It's really the patent engineers.
Yeah.
So basically, you have the lawyers paying somebody else, kind of like it's basically how a dentist would work with a dental hygienist.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
The dental hygienist is doing all the work, but the dentist is getting all the money.
Well, I can back that up because my dentist, I bought his cottage for him. I had 3 daughters. They all had, those braces, and he didn't do much. He just come in and say, yeah, that looks good, but he was good at billing, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So we bought him a cottage. All right, David, I'm coming back to you. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I thought you might be working, instead of listening to the Barstow-Williams report. But, David, can you tell us one of the most innovative digital marketing strategies that Social has been involved with, and share that with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So I think right now what we are really, really trying to do is work with some of Canada's largest media companies to invent new models for monetizing social content while still following the guidelines and rules and regulations of the various social networks, and working directly with them, working directly with Facebook Canada to navigate those waters, because obviously as like big media companies right now, they are struggling to continue to monetize their digital assets because they're still making most of their money through TV or through radio or through print, but that's changing every single day, and if there's nothing in place that is going to take them into the next stage of their evolution, then they're just going to die out. And even things like monetizing mobile and how do you get their content onto mobile devices, like is there prime time for a mobile device versus a TV channel, like these kinds of questions. So I think that's the most interesting stuff that we are working on. There's no answers yet, like we haven't launched anything, there's no programs in market, but I think over the next year, like that's going to be the stuff that we're really, really proud of. And then the other stuff that we're working on is helping major post-secondary institutions work through e-learning challenges. Because, again, like post-secondary institutions are looking outside of if we look in Canada, they're looking outside of the country at international students coming in. International students make up a large portion, and Bruce, you've taught many courses before on entrepreneurship and other things, so I'm sure that you know this, but like international students make up a large percentage of the student population at a post-secondary institution, and the ability to reach an international audience without them sitting in your classroom, I think that's like a really important thing for education moving forward. And we really want to be the leaders in that space. I mean, we're also trying to be the leaders in a few other spaces, so without getting too off the beaten path. But we believe in education and get to work with some really great clients in this space. So just figuring out how a student, any student, anywhere in the world can get certified from Algonquin College or get a postdoctoral degree from Carleton University while learning online. I think that's really important. And then we're doing a bunch of stuff in the medical space, but too much to kind of condense down into 30 seconds or less.
Let's go back to the new media, old media thing. New York Times recently announced that they are going from giving 20 free articles, access to 20 free articles a month on their website to 10, and the direction is that eventually they'll put up a paywall. The Wall Street Journal has a paywall. Harvard.
Well, the Ottawa Citizen has a paywall now too, right?
Oh, I did not know that. Harvard has a paywall. If you want a Harvard case study, you have to pay for it. MIT has gone the other way. MIT believes in information being free, and that the delta factor that they're actually selling is the opportunity to get into a classroom with really smart profs and really smart students. So, I mean, what is your take, David, on the future? Are we going to see Algonquin College and Carleton University and Harvard and, of course, the Ottawa Citizen and everyone else hiding behind paywalls and saying, unless you're, paying, whether you're Google or you're Bing or you're just an ordinary, citizen, you're not going to be able to access anything unless you pay?
Yeah, well, I think that there's been some really great studies. If you look at the model of Huffington Post, or if you look at the model of, mainly Huffington Post, but there's a few other examples too. But to me, it just seems like lazy business, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But it kind of seems like lazy business when you're just putting up a paywall on an online channel when any data is going to basically say, like, that's not going to work long term. Like, maybe your customer today who was paying for a newspaper or paying for a learning module or whatever it is, they're already doing that in a tangible form. You get your newspaper every morning and you pay your monthly or annual subscription. That's not the customer that I am. I'm a pretty young guy and I don't have a subscription to a newspaper. So, putting up paywalls, that's going to work in the short term, but you have to think about, the next generation that's coming down. Like, we're not going to pay for content because we're used to not paying for content. So innovative models need to be created so that content can be distributed for free, but actually still, having a business case and earning revenue and having high profit at the end of the day. So I think that's really the big challenge. It's anyone who's putting up paywalls, you're putting a Band-Aid over a bigger problem, and that's why I said, like, we're trying to work through those issues. So it's it's not about saying now you pay this much per month to access our articles or our information. Can you work with the advertisers that you already have to build a better system for them so that they can even track their own monetization through your platform? If you're the Ottawa Citizen and I'm a car dealership, well, what if the Ottawa Citizen could actually deliver you tangible leads through their advertising and sponsorship programs that you can track and measure, and that your investment in the Citizen is paying off? Like, I don't know a single advertiser out there who wouldn't pay for that kind of a model. But those models aren't really in place right now, unless you look at, like, Google, who does it well, right? So how do you take that over, that kind of pay per performance model in the media world? That's where I think the opportunity is.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a short-term solution. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction, right? Like, they saw their subscriptions go down, and they're like, oh, no, we need to somehow make up the revenue, so We're just going to charge people to get the information. But I agree with Dave. They have to do something more creative and out of the box than just saying, okay, well, we're going to charge you. Because if they're trying to have the same model as, picking up a newspaper and you pay for that and doing it online, and longer term, I don't think that's sustainable. And plus, you're going to be able to find that information somewhere else anyway. So how do you engage your readers in a different way so that they come back to your platform as opposed to a competitor's platform? And making them pay is a barrier to that. It's not thinking long term and engaging them. So.
Yeah, I think you have to find other ways to monetize things, and I think David's on the right track. To me, within a decade. Maybe it takes a little bit more than that, but I don't think so. You won't be able to tell the difference between television, newspapers, blogs, apps, magazines, movies. I mean, the internet and the mobile space is going to eat everything, and you're going to have to find new models, because if you wall off, you'll be like the giant's garden. You'll wall off your space, and it'll always be winter there, in my opinion. So I just don't think it's going to work. And I would rather use the content that I have, whether it's the New York Times or it's the Ottawa Citizen or, for that matter, Harvard Business School business cases, to develop a Twitter following. Somebody told me that every email address that you have permission to talk to through your newsletter is worth $10. And, don't tell me that Harvard Business School couldn't put together an impressive list of people who they have permission to talk to on behalf of themselves, their profs, their students, their staff, what have you. I think there's lots of innovation that's going to happen in this space. but it's probably not going to come from established media. I mean, Mike Arrington is a former colleague of mine, and he went back to California some years ago, and he started something, David, you'll know it, TechCrunch. And it was pretty successful. He sold it to AOL. I think they merged it with Huffington Post now for $30 million. So really, I mean, that can't be all bad.
Well, I think at the end of the day that there's room for both models. I think it's not a black or white business model that you provided. There's not a one-size-fits-all. New York Times, for example, we've been tracking the New York Times, and yes, they've lost a bit of audience by putting on a paywall. However, it's stabilized. And I think the New York Times is a different beast from, say, the Ottawa Citizen. I know a lot of people that used to walk out and get a paper on every Saturday religiously. They used to pick up a paper, the New York Times, and every Saturday they would read it religiously. And the New York Times, yes, they lost a bit of user base, but they've also stabilized, and they are making revenue out of it. However, not everybody can be a New York Times. By paying the New York Times or paying for their paywall, what you're getting is quality. Like the Huffington Post might be a great newspaper or a great blog.
Yeah.
It's really a blog. But at the same time, you can't compare the quality of the Huffington Post to the New York Times, and that's what you're paying for. And I think that there's room for both models. And I don't think that everybody can necessarily copy the model of the New York Times. Just like
I think that's a strong point, Brett, because it's like when my students say, "Can you teach me to get rich quick?" I go, "No, I don't know how to do that." And it's when you read about some kid sketching out a business model on a napkin and selling it two years later for $180 million, that happens less often than winning the lottery. So you can go and get a 649 ticket. You probably have a better shot at making $5 million or more from the lottery than you do from that kind of a business practice. Most people who establish good quality, sound, top-notch businesses, whether they're $5 million or $10 or $15 million a year or they're billions a year, work at it minimum 7 to 12 years. Terry Matthews told me that years ago. It takes him 7 to 12 years to create a great business, and if it takes Terry 7 to 12 years, it's probably going to take us a little longer. So we all have to work at it, and I agree. You can't necessarily compare the New York Times to anything else out there. But I think I'm going to come back to you, David, to comment on Brett's comment. And what is your take on that?
Well, Brett and I, we meet up for lunch every once in a while and have debates like this, so it's always fun. But, Bruce, I think you actually supported my point by supporting Brett's point, which I think is pretty funny. So here I'm going to draw the lines together. I said that there are new models like the Huffington Post that I think will take over. Brett's argument was that, you can't get the quality content that you can get in the New York Times on the Huffington Post, and then you said it takes 7 to 12 years to create a great business. So how long has the New York Times been around versus how long has HuffPo been around? All I'm trying to say is that time is everyone's greatest enemy and greatest asset right now. It's the greatest enemy of the brands, the media brands, the content producers who have been around for a long time with the same model, and it's the greatest asset for the up-and-comers who are bringing new things to the table. So how it'll all come out in the wash, I think even if you look at MySpace with kind of marketing and communications and technology agencies, when we started our business a few years ago, the big agencies were struggling to figure out the digital models that their clients were asking for. They're struggling to figure out social. They're struggling to figure out how technology could be involved in advertising and in traditional media. And fast forward 2 years later, and we're all more on an equal playing field now. Like when we go into a pitch against a big Toronto or a big U.S.-based agency, they've hired the people who know the stuff that we know. So it's no longer like our unique selling point is that we know the stuff that the big guys don't. So now you have to differentiate it and you have to grow and expand, and that's why you've even seen with our business going from really focused on social to being a more fully integrated digital agency. It's because that's what has to happen, and I think that the great brands will evolve, and that's why if you see big media companies, because that's what we're talking about, if they're not evolving constantly, then the smaller, nimble players like are gonna come up. And if you look at part of TechCrunch's model, they made a lot of money doing events. They I don't know the numbers, but I know that they're making a ton of money doing TechCrunch Disrupts in multiple cities, around North America and now around the world. And it'll be interesting to see on their balance sheet, like how much revenue is coming from, offline streams compared to even just their content channel. And that's a perfect example. So that's my very long and drawn out rebuttal.
But I mean, can I interject with something? Like, the New York Times, though, like if they decided to copy the Huffington Post, it would be a huge mistake. And that's my point. I think what you want to do is you gotta figure out what you're good at in business. And right now you got to figure out, I call it your hedgehog. What is the hedgehog of the New York Times? It's quality. They can't trade on this. Like if they go out there and they do Huffington Post, what they're doing is they're trading on their masthead and their brand. They can't do that. And I think that's what traditional newspapers have to remember.
But
it's all about quality.
I understand. I'm not. I think David actually kind of supported that. But what I'm saying is that if I were the New York Times, or for that matter the Ottawa Citizen, and I look at, say, one of my biggest profit centers, which is my classified advertising, not sexy, but important. Hey, the New York Times, if you looked at their classified ads 10 years ago, that was a big section of the newspaper. Same with the Citizen. And why would you ever sit there and allow these young people like Stephanie and David and you, Brett, and Alex here too, come and eat your lunch? With like Kijiji, I mean, the Kijiji model isn't that difficult to duplicate, and yet the Ottawa Citizen and the New York Times and hundreds of other newspapers around the world, they sat there on the Titanic and said, no, we have a gated universe, you have to pay to be in our classified ads, the freemium model isn't for us, that Kijiji thing is never going to work, and what would you rather own today? I mean, you look at the classified section of most newspapers, it's practically shrunk to zero.
Well, let me ask you a question.
All right.
What is the difference? Okay, so is the Ottawa Citizen, for example, content creators or content curators?
I think they're both.
No, they should only be one. To me, they should be content creators. You have lots of content curators there. So this would be my solution to the Ottawa Citizen. What I think they should do is, what does news represent to most social media people? SEO?
Yes.
SEO is the biggest thing. So and really most social media people want to drive traffic. Most advertisers want to drive traffic. If the newspapers aren't good at it, get out of that business. Stick to what you know, which is the content creation. Create that quality, because right now they're trading on that quality to try to chase the Huffington Post.
Yeah, but
so
they
will be the Huffington Post.
If we had the editorial board, Ottawa Citizen, or for that matter, the New York Times here, you just fired them all. Because have you watched the new show? The new series. You just did the new series, the Newsroom, right? They all get together and decide what is the news, right? And that is a curation.
Well, but what they do is they bring in those checks and balances and that quality. So to me, what the editorial board does, what the newsrooms do, is they make sure that at the end of the day, when you're putting news out there, it's accurate and factual. The Huffington Post doesn't do that, right? The Huffington Post is all about trying to get as much cheap content as possible. And I don't think that the traditional newspaper should be doing that. However, what they are doing, which everybody has picked up on, is they created these walls and these gates, which I don't believe in.
Okay, we have only a few seconds left. How much time did she say?
We got a minute and a half.
Minute and a half, so keep going, Steph, and then over to you, Brent, and then I'll have a few comments at the end.
So I love the way that it's actually changing the way we're interacting with brands and demanding more immediate action from, if you're having an issue with WestJet and you tweet them and, they reply within X number of time. Like, we're going to see those kinds of demands, I think, across all of their channels. So I think but using the channels as customer service is also very useful for brands.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Brett?
In short, it's just another evolution to communications, and I think that sums it all up for me. You have to embrace it because this is how people are communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My only regret, I have to say, is that Twitter, for example, wasn't where it's at today when I was your age, Alex, 21 or 22. because, I have about 2,300 followers on Twitter, and I really enjoy it. And for me, it's a wonderful way to communicate. I like Twitter best, I have to admit. I'm on LinkedIn, Google+, and Facebook. But Twitter, because it's not a gated community, you kind of see my bias there. It's exposing followers to each other and to the whole world. I really like it. So I think, how much time have we got left now?
Just out of time here.
I just want to thank everybody, Fred and David and Stephanie and Alex for coming today. It's been just great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.